Hey guys, it's VT here, and we've just had Magneto revealed as the latest hero in Marvel Champions. We had a preview article, and what's really weird is that I think the leadership aspect cards that he comes with, maybe they're more interesting than the hero himself, which never thought I'd say about Magneto, but I love the new aspect cards we're getting here. If you watch my video with Nelson, where we first reacted to the new stuff, I like basically all of them, even more than I did then, but I did make a mistake about one. But before we get into that, I want to say that they're all combo cards. What is a combo card? Well, it's a card that if you play it in, combination with another card, you get a bigger effect. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And while I really want to talk about Cyclops in that context, let's talk about that mistake I made in the reaction video. I misread Won't Stay Down. Part of its alter ego action says discard this card. I didn't see that. I thought it was exhaust this card. I don't know how this happened. My brain probably took in the information correctly, didn't process it right, and yeah, it's just a big misunderstanding. So Won't Stay Down is a lot worse than I initially thought, yet it's still interesting, and from a balanced and interesting deck building perspective, maybe even better. So that's really fun. So it's a 1-cost support. Play any of you of the X-Men or X-Force trait, which is really fascinating because you have to play it in hero form, but you can only use it with the alter ego action, obviously in alter ego form. So most characters are changing form anyway. Anyone who might want to use something in alter ego is probably going hero form quite a lot anyway, most of the game, whether they're flipping every turn or just occasionally. And what it does is you discard it, not exhaust it, you discard it, and then you return an X-Force or X-Men ally from your discard pile to your hand. So this is actually quite a balanced effect. It's part of the new school of balanced recursion, which is not something I ever thought we'd see for leadership. We now have Med Team, which is balanced by being quite slow and conditional, but Suit Up and Won't Stay Down share the same downside. Aside from, Won't Stay Down's, play it in the right form, use it in the other form kind of little mini puzzle. The problem, or, extra cost from Won't Stay Down and Suit Up compared to the old recursion cards in leadership is that you are left at a 1-cost deficit. What do I mean by that? Well, if I play Won't Stay Down from my hand, same with Suit Up, paying for them with cards in my hand, they do end up putting cards back into my hand. I'm now 1 card, down from where I started. And this is fine, and this is kind of how I think recursion probably should have always been in Marvel Champions, if I'm honest. And I'm kind of glad it works like this. So no problems here from me. Allies are incredibly, incredibly strong. They often punch above their weight. And if you want to play the same one again in a row, this is fine. The problem, as it were here, is that the old school of recursion cards, Regroup and Make the Call, they're basically 2 of the most powerful cards in the game. And if I had to rate them side by side, Regroup and Make the Call absolutely blow the new recursion cards out of the water in 95% of cases, 95% of allies. But, there are exceptions. Won't Stay Down puts the ally back into your hand, which means you can get interplay from hand effects. Regroup does work this way, but it's not on demand. Won't Stay Down, you can wait for the right ally to use it on at the right time, and Regroup really, and it gets crazy powerful in multiplayer, although there are some single, solo play use cases. So having allies you want to play from hand is going to be the primary reason to use Won't Stay Down, especially allies that you want to play at a certain time, because you can play Won't Stay Down and it will just sit there for several turns. You trigger it when you need it. So certain allies are like Pixie and Shadowcat that, get a benefit from played from hand. Though do be careful with Shadowcat, because you can only play her if your identity has the X-Men trait, which you probably won't in Alter Ego, unless you have Honorary X-Men. But in general, I do think there are very interesting uses here. Pixie's just powerful, let's face it. That's kind of recursion leading to recursion. With Shadowcat, let's say you went Alter Ego for some reason, and then a Crisis side scheme came down, but because you went Alter Ego, the villain schemed, and now the threat is in danger, you could grab Shadowcat with Won't Stay Down. She could blink the Crisis icon. You can get the main scheme back under control before you deal with the Crisis icon side scheme. So there's some interesting stuff there. If your name is Cyclops, there are other allies with cool interplay effects that you might want to use here. Magic gets rid of a minion. Sunfire gets rid of an attachment. Karma turns a minion into an ally. But the best use I've found for this, which I didn't find, is Honey Badger. Honey Badger is X23's signature ally. Extremely, extremely powerful. And the bad thing is the obligation from X23 can make you discard Honey Badger. That's extremely annoying. Now, X23 is so strong that even though, yes, losing Honey Badger is a massive hit to your tempo, it's a massive, it kind of slows down the momentum. X23 is usually fine and has ways to get Honey Badger back already, but none of them are as reliable and on demand as Won't Stay Down. So she can play Won't Stay Down because she's X-Force. When she goes Alter Ego, she can trigger it to find an X-Men ally. It's really convenient for her that this card is phrased so flexibly in terms of the trait restrictions. And Yeah, if you've got a sidekick, Honey Badger that you've lost, it kind of sucks, but getting her back this quick is really, really strong, and I think this would be really fun. Now, I saw this in the comment section of the reaction video I did with Nelson for the new Magneto cards, and it was pointed out to me by Fault Boy. Technically, they were responding to somebody else under my comment, but nonetheless, credit to them. Very, very cool idea. I think Honey Badger and Won't Stay Down is going to be a really nice combo. Next up, we have Cyclops, which is the card I'm most excited to talk about here. Very strong card, 3-cost ally, 2 stats in basically everything, which is a little bit weak for 3 cost. 2 hit points, 3 cost. Cyclops, however, has this really fascinating response. After Cyclops enters play, choose an enemy. Until the end of the phase, increase the amount of damage that enemy takes from each attack by 1. This is kind of insane. This is reminiscent of Cyclops' exploit weakness upgrade from his own signature kit as a hero, which you attach to an enemy, and yeah, it takes 1 extra damage from every attack. And if you looked at the thumbnail, I said, oh, this could be 3 damage from every attack. This is the card I'm talking about. We'll get into how that works in a minute, but for now, just adding 1 damage from each attack is really powerful. At a very simple level, you could be playing a multiplayer, 4 players with each different allies attacks, basic attack. All these things get their attack damage increased. So dropping Cyclops with 3 other players at the table, huge damage you can put on the villain. This is how you can end games much more easily. Or if there's a big minion, particularly maybe something like a dragon or the sleeper in Red Skull, hugely helpful. If we consider Cyclops also basically, casting, playing a copy of exploit weakness like the Cyclops hero might, well, that's a 1-cost card. If we take the effective resources, which is 2, off of Cyclops' cost, he's basically a 1-cost ally for 2 fort, 2 attack, 2 health. It's crazy whatever way you want to look at it. Now, some turns, especially like say solo, you'll just play Cyclops, you might only get a couple extra damage out of it, and it's all fine. It's probably how it's meant to be balanced. But you can do a lot with this card, and I quickly want to shout out Float Like a Butterfly, which it kind of resembles, because if the enemy is confused, having Float Like Butterfly on the board is going to make your characters all deal 1 extra damage from attacks as well. So you can even combine this in multiplayer with a multi-aspect character like Spider-Woman, which is a whole other level of crazy, but that's not what I'm talking about here. When I say every character in the game, you can get +3 damage on all your attacks. How do you do that? They didn't put a cap on Cyclops' response. It's not limit once per phase or round. This means if you recur him, and we've actually just seen a new way to recur him, you can get 2 damage from every attack. If you manage to play him twice, trigger his response twice in a single phase or round, yeah, things could get really crazy. So we can build for that. So I've got a deck on Marvel CDB called the Bub Club. It's all about Wolverine, recurring Jubilee, like I just talked about a bit there, because actually her bonuses, at least for Wolverine, can stack on the villain. Just like Cyclops' effect here to deal more damage can stack on the villain. So the kind of combo is we set up Command Team and Rapid Response on our board. We play Cyclops, he chooses the villain, now we're dealing 1 more damage to the villain. Attack with Cyclops for 3, Command Team to ready him up, attack with Cyclops for 3. That's 6 damage already there, but we can Rapid Response to bring Cyclops back immediately. And for some reason, he is not, an ally whose effect happens when it enters play from hand. He just has to enter play from any source. So Rapid Response brings him back, and we can choose the villain again, and now the villain is taking increased attack damage of 2. That's insane, but what if we just attack with Cyclops again, because he came in with 1 less health from Rapid Response? So, okay, now he's attacking for 4 damage. We've done 10 damage here. Cyclops is discarded again. Well, if we happen to have him in hand with Make the Call, we just make the call for him, play him again. And now the villain is taking an increased damage of 3 from all attacks, which is ludicrous. And yeah, you need to set up a couple of cards first. Yeah, with this example, you need to have Make the Call in hand as well. But this is very feasible, especially if you did have Cyclops in play already, started Alter Ego, used Won't Stay Down to bring him into your hand in the first place when you saw that you had Make the Call. There's a dozen different ways you can do this. You could have another Rapid Response in hand and play that afterwards. You can chain things together and make this work. I've done this kind of thing a lot just with the Jubilee ally, among other builds and things. You can definitely do it with Cyclops, and in 4-player, adding 3 damage from every player's attack, whether it's an ally, basic attack, event, that is kind of game breaking. And if you pull this combo off, which is pretty easy to pull off, especially because Command Team is a good card on its own with other good targets, so is Rapid Response. It's not like you're locked into my deck is only good if everything comes up quickly for Cyclops. Things are just good here. Yeah, this is a real thing that I'm not sure the designers accounted for. But recursion kind of stuff, a lot of people won't use it or use it sparingly because it's so strong. And the people who do use it because it's strong are just going to love this anyway. So not a huge deal here. I do think this is really fun. I am kind of excited just to mess around with this, and I really like it. But whether you use it for, 3 damage, and you could even get 4 or 5 damage if you really want to recur it in a crazy way, which it is possible. But even if you just get it once, plus 1 damage to the villain on all your attacks for the phase, you can do some really fun stuff with other characters. War Machine, for example, very famous nowadays for shoulder cannon and float like a butterfly being combined. If the enemy is confused and he has float like a butterfly on his board, his shoulder cannon, instead of dealing 1 damage every time, is dealing 2 damage every time, which is huge. Well, Cyclops does the same thing, and again, in multiplayer, you can combine them. But we also have characters that like to ready a lot, that like float like a butterfly as well. Quicksilver, X-23, you'll see a lot of her in this video. This is the second time she's here. We'll see her again. And Special Doctor, these characters can ready up a lot. 1 extra damage from each attack for these characters means several points of extra damage. We also have characters with multi-attack events, like Flurry of Blades from Psylocke, Dance of Death from Black Widow, Royal Flush from Gambit. Well, these will get a +3 damage increase from just using Cyclops once. If you recur Cyclops and then get to manage to play one of these, if you had it in the hand as well, you could get +6 damage, which is stupid. And in a similar vein, we have Grand Finale with Jubilee, which I believe it does 4 instances of damage if you pay with all different resource types. We talked about this in one of my previous videos recently. Getting 4 extra damage from Cyclops is huge. You can even get an extra +1 from her sunglasses, which will respond to her playing Grand Finale. I think it goes from basically 11 damage maxed out with the combo here on the screen to 16 with the new Cyclops ally, which is crazy. So really strong stuff here. So why is Star-Lord on the screen as well? Well, Star-Lord is kind of my stand-in representing any deck build that wants to flood the board with allies, which is kind of Star-Lord's thing. But you can totally do that, and then all your allies are going to benefit from Cyclops making the target take more damage. Star-Lord actually also has 2 element guns he can have in play, so that's extra +2 damage, +1 from each of them he might use that turn. He's just got, Daring Escape, Sliding Shot, things you might want to combo already, things that already lead to big damage combos. Well, big damage combos just got bigger. That about does it for Cyclops here in this video, but there are lots of different things, lots of different characters that can do a lot of different damage. You might even run multiple leadership decks in multiplayer. If you have Avengers Assemble kind of deck on the table that can, attack, then ready everyone up and attack again. Let's say you have someone else at the table that is going to play Cyclops for you first on their turn. It's just so devastating. It's really, really powerful. Next up, we have Phoenix following on from Cyclops. Phoenix is a good ally, another 3-cost ally with the X-Men trait. This is really helping to flesh out the X-Men leadership builds because, okay, leadership X-Men builds were already insanely strong, but they had to rely on basic allies a lot. Now we're getting some really good leadership allies, which I think is really fun. I kind of prefer to use them. That's going to be nice to see. So she's got 2 forwarding, 3 health. This is already baseline fine. Maybe not amazing, but fine. Sonic trait is going to turn Cerebro on for more X-Men characters. That's really, really good. But her response is incredible. So after she enters play, choose an X-Men ally. Not only do you get to ready it, but you get to heal 1 damage from it. That's just like game time. I think it's meant to resemble Psychic Kicker because normally, allies represent the hero version of themselves, but Phoenix doesn't have anything about readying allies normally, but this aspect card that she's one of the few characters that can use does. But it's just game time. It is ready an ally, heal it for 1 damage, and the advantage with Phoenix is you don't need a training upgrade attached to the ally like Game Time does. This is just good. You could kind of consider her response being whatever the damage or footing that you would do from readying up another ally and using them, that's kind of what she's bringing to the table. And that's super, super flexible. Now, the downside is you need another X-Men ally on the board, but X-Men leadership decks are absolutely going to have that, and some extra allies to spare. That's not really a problem or downside at all, in my opinion. If anything, it's a strength that it can work with so many different allies and get different benefits. But things get crazier when we consider the specific allies we can use it with. Let's have a look at Honey Badger again. Yep, X-23. Phoenix is raiding up Honey Badger as well. And raiding up Honey Badger means X-23 is readying up. And maybe with Cyclops also, there. Maybe with Won't Stay Down, making Honey Badger more consistently in play. Oh, it's going to be a lot of damage for X-23, which is not something she lacked for, but more damage is never bad, especially because this can also just be more forwarding, which is really very, 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 very good. Another signature ally that I do like with Phoenix, though, is Jubilee's signature ally, Wolverine. So 3 attack, 2 consequential damage, 4 hit points. This means normally you need to basic attack, then basic fort, then go Alter Ego with Jubilee, which triggers his response to heal for 3 damage when you go Alter Ego. If you want to attack with Wolverine, then attack again, well, he's going to deal 2 damage to himself, go down to 2 hit points, then he's going to knock himself out. With Phoenix, you can attack for Wolverine for 3 damage. He'll take 2 damage, go down to 2 health. Phoenix will ready him up and heal him to 3 health. He can attack again, go down to 1 health. Then Jubilee can go Alter Ego and heal Wolverine to full, having done 2 attacks with him. It's very neat, very smooth. It's just good. It's going to be a really nice little combo to have if you're playing Jubilee in leadership. Now, maybe not her naturally, her best aspect that she, perhaps shows off her signature kit with, but I think it's going to be fun to do this. I like that we have the option. We also have Jubilee, the signature ally for Wolverine. Wolverine, Jubilee, X23, lots of kind of stuff going on here with them. And yeah, Jubilee increases the damage she will deal by +2 when you bring her in. If you bring Phoenix in at the same turn, made more easy with cards like Won't Stay Down, it's just going to be able to get an extra 3 damage out of her, kind of like raiding up Vivian. Very nice. Then we have Storm, which if you have a side scheme you don't care about too much, maybe a player side scheme that you just paid 0 cost to bring in onto the board, oh, maybe Master Plan hit it, we're not going to bother anymore. Well, Storm forwards for 2, then moves to threat, moving it onto a side scheme, as I said, you don't care about. It's basically like forwarding for 4 in that case, because 4 threat is gone from somewhere that you do care about. Phoenix readying up an ally that has basically 4 forwarding, very strong. But the reason I really want to talk about Storm here is a bridge into the Storm hero. Phoenix and Storm have a team-up card, which is incredibly powerful, but it's not spoken of a lot because Phoenix and Storm, well, Phoenix can use it a lot, but Storm cannot use it in solo play or multiplayer without Phoenix, the player, being there, because there was never any Phoenix ally in the deck building pool that she could take. Now she can take this leadership Phoenix card, and she already loves the leadership. I mean, who doesn't? But Storm with the Phoenix ally, now using the team-up card, this is going to be very popular. It's going to be very, very strong. Soul Sisters is a 1-cost event that readies Phoenix and Storm and heals 2 damage from each of them. Just the readying here is quite strong. So getting the 2 damage healed as well, incredible. Next up, we have Noble Sacrifice, which I was not very positive about during the reaction video. It's like, yeah, this seems fine, but this and that. I was wrong. I've actually come around on this card in a huge way. The more I think about this card, the more I like it. And I kept adding extra bits onto this video. I want to talk about it. I had to stop. I like this card. So it's a 1-cost event that makes you discard an ally you control for some kind of benefit. It kind of mirrors Go Down Swinging and Save the Day. So Go Down Swinging, discard an ally, deal damage equal to the ally's printed cost. Save the Day, exactly the same, but after you're discarding the ally, you get to remove threat equal to the ally's cost. Well, Save the Day costs a little bit more because forwarding is more expensive, but it's so expensive, even if it's only a 1-cost increase, people don't really use this card. Go Down Swinging, I think it's a fun card. I do like to try and use it, but it is best basically in rush decks, and other than that, it's not a very popular card. Is Noble Sacrifice going to suffer that same fate? Because yeah, it's 1 cost more than Save the Day, which, as I said, doesn't really get used very much. Well, there's a difference here, because Noble Sacrifice, while you discard an ally the same, it doesn't care about the printed cost, which is a mistake I also made. It cares about the printed hit points. This is a really interesting difference here. So that ally could have been at 1 hit point, but you only care about its maximum hit points that are printed on the card. That's very powerful. So just like Go Down Swinging and Save the Day, the optimal timing for efficiency, which you can break if you need to break it, but for efficiency, you get that ally down to 1 health, you discard it, get the benefit, exactly the same here. What makes Noble Sacrifice stand apart even more than that, however, is that it says, and give your hero a tough status card. Getting a tough status card is really, really good. It protects you from overkill, it protects you from indirect damage, like Sandman. So scenarios where that is prominent, Noble Sacrifice is really good against them. But here's the thing, it's also a hero action that can heal your hero. That's very, very good. Now, point for point, it's not the most, precious thing ever, I would say. But the real problem with healing in hero form without having to go Alter Ego is that it's kind of a supply and demand problem. The supply is short, the demand can be high. Noble Sacrifice fits in really nicely here. Now, there are some downsides. You do need to have an ally on the board, but if you're playing leadership, guess what you're going to have? You probably want to flood that board with allies to some extent. Noble Sacrifice works really well in that regard, because if you do need some healing in a pinch, it's going to find it for you. Tough cards are really good against Overkill, Project Wide Awake, Unus from the latest expansion, Age of Apocalypse, and yeah, it's got some uses. There are other cases as well, indirect damage like Sandman, so I do like Noble Sacrifice there, but blocking with an ally is still good in 85% of scenarios, so instead of having your one-cost ally, you now got a tough status card. It's basically just a swap. Sometimes it's an advantage, sometimes it's not. It's really retrading the one cost for healing, and we can look at other cards to work that out. And what's interesting is that aspect cards and hero cards, with hero cards normally being better than aspect cards, actually they kind of offer a lot of the same healing. They typically, maybe the hero cards are less conditional, but there are a lot of cards in the game, way more than I put on the screen, that basically turn one effective resource into 2 healing, which is quite difficult for Noble Sacrifice to keep up with. So to mirror the value of these cards and other cards in the game, such as Precision Strike, which is an aspect card in aggression, we really need a 4 printed hit point ally. But I think healing is in such, demand in hero form, I think if you get 3 healing from it, it's also completely usable and very nice. But if you can get 4, that's really good. 4 healing and a tough is going to be particularly good. And there are allies which can do it, and there are some allies which go beyond or have other benefits. Nelson pointed out in the reaction video that sometimes you play Professor X and you want to use a Confuse immediately, so you go Alter Ego. Well, if you happen to have him in hand with Noble Sacrifice, play him, thought of him, get that Confuse as well from the Force Response first, then play Noble Sacrifice, convert him into a tough card, and get some healing. You basically save yourself from missing the chump block because you grabbed that tough status card before you went Alter Ego. Also, I shouted out Groot. Groot having 6 health for a 3-cost ally, really, really good. If he gets down to low hit points, you can turn him into 6 healing, which is really, really interesting and very, very good. So that's pretty interesting, and I also want to shout out characters who would like this. Star-Lord, he gets himself into trouble, gets lots of attacks. Getting some healing in hero form is good, getting a tough card is good, but he also likes to flood the board with allies, as I talked about earlier in this video. So Noble Sacrifice can free up your ally slots. If you were going to play an ally to overwrite one of your allies, well, Noble Sacrifice can kind of prevent, the wastage in that respect. Hawkeye as well is another character that's very, very low on defense that might like Noble Sacrifice, being able to heal him back up. Hawkeye also has really bad forwarding and his Alter Ego is terrible. So Noble Sacrifice preventing him from needing to get Alter Ego and use his recovery, just very, very good. The problem will be with these characters, deck space. Deck space is ever the problem, in modern deck building, because there are so many good cards now, but that's a good problem to have. I also want to shout out 2 other heroes, which are what made me most excited for Noble Sacrifice and make me most want to make this video, because I wasn't sure I was going to analyze these cards like I do for all the aspect cards on new heroes. I kind of thought maybe people aren't as interested. Those videos don't tend to do as well. But we got to talk about Colossus. Colossus loves tough status cards. Noble Sacrifice is a way that he can very reliably get a tough status card. It doesn't matter if he is at full health. The healing from Noble Sacrifice, unlike a lot of other healing cards in the game like Momentum Shift, doesn't care what health you're at. You can just ignore the healing part of this. It will have to happen if it can happen, but if you're at full health, no worries, you still get the tough status card. If you have allies on the board as Colossus, but no toughs, you can't activate your events, you might want to just Noble Sacrifice anyway. This is a really, really fun way to play Colossus, I think. Maybe not the best or most powerful way in some cases, but a 1-cost way to get a tough, you'll sometimes trade an ally for that, no problem. The hero I'm most excited for this with is Drax. I love Drax. I like to take him out of protection. Most people think you can only play Drax in protection. They're wrong. He has good aggression builds, multiplayer especially. You can do some weird justice builds if you finesse it a little bit. Leadership's kind of good for him already, I think, and Noble Sacrifice is going to push it to the next level. Drax wants to get hit in the face. He doesn't want his allies to block for him. This can turn blocking with an ally into a tough on you, so you're still blocking the damage, just like a chump block would, but you're taking the attack on Drax, you're getting your vengeance counters, or you're getting your card draw if you've already got your counters. Great. Since Drax already wants to get hit in the face, Noble Sacrifice can get you those hit points back, it will heal you. Very, very good. I'm super, super, super excited to try Leadership Drax again. I think that's going to be really, really fun. And Mantis Who? Now you can get healing out of any allies as long as you have them on the board when you have Noble Sacrifice. So I like this a lot. Lastly, we've got this side scheme, New Recruits, which is kind of a weird side scheme. We've seen some player side schemes in the other recent packs where you get a benefit if you have the X-Men trait. This one is locked to the X-Men trait. And when defeated, it adds a new kind of ally to your hand with the new trait. It's all about the new X-Men. And that's really interesting. The only one we've seen so far is Anoli, But this is a 0-cost player side scheme, which is already kind of interesting to have. Only 2 threat per person. So you lose a card from your hand by playing it. You fought for 2 in solo play, and you get a card added back to your hand. So you're kind of at a 2 threat removal deficit here. You just traded 1 card for another and had to exhaust someone probably to get that thwarting. But these allies are actually particularly good. So Anoli here is a 2-cost ally, has 2 fort, 2 attack, 2 hit points, kind of just like Cyclops actually. And here's a really interesting ability. So the length keyword here is just like we've seen with specialized training. He is just set aside at the start of the game. If somebody has new recruits in their deck, he's not part of your deck. But then he is when you defeat new recruits, and you choose him because you get to choose different set aside ones. He's the only one we know, as I said. His ability is if you have the right trait, mutant or X-Men, he gets +1 thwarting and does not count against your ally limit. Not counting against your ally limit in leadership X-Men decks, huge. That's good in its own. +1 thwarting basically puts him up to Vivian levels of thwarting. She's one of the best signature allies in the game. That's very good. And suddenly that 2 thwarting deficit doesn't look that bad when you've got a 3 thwarting ally, which could be 3 hit points with Uncanny X-Men, and only costs 1 cost to get in play with Uncanny X-Men. This is going to be very good. Will it go in every single deck? No, but it is worth considering, and it'll be very fascinating to see what the other allies are that you can choose from. Presumably, we're going to get one that has extra attack, and maybe one with extra health, and so on. But something else to this as well. The ability to just throw 2 thwarting into this when you want. You could play the 0-cost card and leave it there. It's going to make it really reliable to trigger things like Utopia. So if you've got Utopia on the board, but you didn't draw any allies, and you can't trigger its readying, that kind of sucks. What if you played that player side scheme a turn or 2 ago? Thwart it, get that card, play that ally, and ready up. And then we've got Danger Room as well. You can do something very similar, and Danger Room training on Anoli is the example as the only ally we've seen from this side scheme. He could basically become a 4 thwarting ally with very little effort. That is considerable, and if we combine Danger Room training with Uncanny X-Men, he's just got 4 hit points and 4 thwarting, which is 16 threat removal. He's very good, guys. So this is going to be very usable, and I like it. But something that interests me is how it doesn't count against your ally limit. Are all the allies we can choose from this player side team going to have that wording on it? Because if so, in multiplayer, other people could choose not to play whichever allies they get, put them into their discard pile. You can make the call for them and build up a huge, huge board. If I'm playing an X-Men hero with Utopia, I can have 4 allies. With whichever ally I get from new recruits, I can get 5. If I make the call for everyone else's, I can get 6, 7, 8. I could, maybe build support in nowhere. Now I'm up to 10. You can kind of break the game here if you were to then use strength in numbers and draw 10 cards. Now, this is an incredibly difficult amount of setup that's probably not worth it, but just being able to break the ally limit is good for strength in numbers. You don't have to break it as much as I said. You don't have to go to the very maximum possible. Just getting up to 5, 6, 7 allies for strength in numbers is kind of stupid. I do think this will be kind of viable, in all honesty. I'm thinking Bishop with lots of money to pay for these. He wants to get hit, doesn't have to block with these allies. Strength in numbers, get more resources into hand, huge rifle hits, huge, just able to play those cards with all the resources he has. It's going to be very, very interesting. Now, a little bit of a gimmick. Honestly, just Anoli not counting toward that ally limit is so good in solo. I've played solo X-Men decks which combine Uncanny X-Men and strength in numbers, and Unholy and new recruits are probably going to be there. So that's kind of fun to see. All these fun combos which make cards which are on paper good, really good, is just something I enjoy, as I said at the start of the video. So a huge, huge thumbs up to the designers from these new aspect cards with Magneto. Honestly, guys, that about does it. Which is your favorite new card from the Magneto preview? I am struggling. I originally said Cyclops in the reaction video with Nelson, probably still is, but Noble Sacrifice, really, really intriguing. Phoenix I still think is fun. Wednesday Down, again, there's interesting ways you can use it, still good. New recruits, I really want to know what the other allies are before I pass judgment on that, but all of it's good, all of it's usable, all of it's fun, and is all of it balanced? Well, we'll see about Cyclops if you want to, really, push him to his limit. But yeah, I'm very intrigued. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.